Okay. Okay, so guys, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Can everyone hear me well? Anybody?
Yes, it's okay.
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you. Amazing. Thank you, Angela. So I've begun the recording and I want to introduce myself to you guys a little bit, people that don't know me yet, and maybe in the process of these four, well, this is the fourth webinar that I have created. I'm a life coach. And the reason I've created this conversation about love, hi, because I've been interested in it myself. I have had questions, and in the sharing, in the sharing of all of this with you, I will be sharing some of my personal reflections because love was something that I had to learn for myself. Okay, let me add a few more people. And I gotta be honest with you, I am still learning. I am 47 years old. I've been married 3 times and recently separated. And I guess 8 months ago when I got separated, this is the time when I decided to ask myself, what am I missing? What is that something about love that I'm not understanding? And as I went out and connected on different sites, I started understanding it a little more. And in order to begin this, I want to begin. We have talked about many topics here, and today in our conversation today, I decided to bring one more topic forward that has been everywhere I look, and it is definitely about the toxicity of our relationships. Something that I used to think I had to isolate from as well. So here's a little quote that I will share with you guys. And maybe this is how we're going to begin our discussion. Okay, so mind is a flexible mirror adjusted to see a better world. I remember when I first heard this by Amit Ray, I questioned myself. I wondered, what is it? What is this person referring to when they are talking about the mirror? And guys, this is a first quote that I would like to begin with. What do you guys hear when you read this quote? What is this person referring to when they're talking about a mirror? Because and you could raise your hands if you feel free, like talk if you want to talk and you feel like yeah, you want to share. Kevin, go right ahead.
Well, to me is whenever you're trying to judge someone, always look at yourself. So for me, I've been
Kevin?
practicing. Hello?
Hello? Okay, Kevin's quiet for some reason, or maybe I'm not hearing him. There you go. Kevin, can you say again? Okay, there we go. There was something on my end. Thanks God. I fixed it. Go on, Kevin.
So whenever you're trying to judge someone, just always look at yourself first. So for me, like one of the things I've been practicing is like whenever you're judging, it's not my place to judge anyone because since I am not perfect and I have plenty of flaws.
Yeah. That is exactly what it is. Guys, when we thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Kevin, for sharing, because when we begin with the mirror, pointing mirror towards ourselves, we begin to see some of the things that we may experience in us. And to begin this whole conversation, and Lincoln, definitely, I will get to you in a second. We begin to, and guys, who's got their, who's been, can you mute yourself in so we don't, okay, there we go. When we begin this exercise with a mirror, because every relationship that we get into our lives, that whether it's a son, whether it's a wife, whether it's a mother, hold on, there's people coming in. I want you to start having that understanding in, if the people are in our lives, they're in our lives for a reason. As my, hold on, let me just mute someone because it's been, okay. Is there any way that I could mute? There we go. Okay. When we talk about the toxicity of people, and people are being toxic and trying to isolate them from our relationships, and by bringing the mirror into our own view, what we're doing is we're literally beginning to understand that every relationship that we inquire or come across in our life is a representation of us, a little something, some portion of equivalent that is in us. And as we go along, guys, we will definitely take a look into it a little more, because the only way that I could explain that, we come across people and relationships that we experience for the better understanding of ourselves. There is definitely a lesson. There's definitely something that we have to learn about ourselves in that particular moment, whether we're having difficulties in our relationships with our mates, whether it's our mothers, whether it's our children, whether it's co-workers or anything at that current point. Do not begin to isolate people out of your life. That is not the solution. And in my next slide, I will bring that forward as well. But now, Lincoln, you've been having your hand up for a while. Would you like to comment on the first slide?
Hi there. Thank you. Yes, I would. I
Yeah.
think it comes down to, again, with the mirror perspective, or this phrase, perspective is reality.
Yeah.
I don't know if I wholly agree with the quote, though. I do think there are some things where toxicity has nothing to do with you in particular, and more to do with that to the other person, if they are the one contributing to it. But if the situation is such where it's something that's a reoccurring theme for you, then yes, there's probably some evidence of a lesson that you haven't learned.
Very good, Lincoln. Can I ask you, and this is only if you're open to share, can you give me that one example, that one person that you are having this reoccurrence with, of the toxicity of this relationship that you really feeling the biggest resistance within? Is there an example of that one person?
I don't know if you can say one person. For me, I look at more or less the patterns that I have in my relationships, things that I've done, things I've done to shift away from that, and what's been the change or what's been the same.
And Link, if you're open, you could definitely share one example. If you're not ready, You don't have to.
Sure,
I'll provide examples. Are you ready?
sure.
Okay. Just one, with one person, because we could generally speak about everybody else, but it is great when we zoom in on that one conversation so we could get clarity within.
I think with the last relationship, or one of the last relationships that I had, there was this woman that I was seeing. I was interested in her, more or less for the purposes of marriage. But I found that this particular woman, though she approached the relationship as if she wanted to get married, more or less, I think she used relationships as a way to get self-esteem, right? Or she wanted to keep her options open. More or less, what I had to learn in that respect was self-love. During that period, I also spoke with a lot of other female friends that I had, as well as a lot of male friends to get their perspectives on the topic, and found that like there's this currently an overwhelming theme that it seems to be more popular now of self-love, people needing to understand their own boundaries. But it seems like nowadays people, we don't really know what those boundaries are, because before, society kind of told us what those are and you just kind of followed those things. Now, more or less, because society is more open to different ways of life, relationships aren't as cut as dry as they used to be. So I find the lesson in self-love is more important now, because you have to set your own standards. But the issues is figuring out what your values are, what your deal breakers are, and that shifts and changes with life. And so more or less, I think that's a result of just how people are able to divorce more and less. Some of that's also just the way society changes. So I don't necessarily think it's anything that we've done. It's a combination of factors.
Beautiful, Lincoln. Thank you. Thank you, because yes, what you share is so true. Because you see, one of the things that I had to understand for myself, especially coming from so many marriages and so many relationships that I had in the past that didn't work out. Some of them worked out for a short or a longer period of time. And then I noticed that I'm creating the same pattern of being with someone, putting myself, and this was my story, guys. I always talked about, the fact that I'm putting myself out there. I'm loyal. I'm giving myself, and that is the story that I really love to tell. Here I was giving myself fully to this one person, contributing and creating, and yet my issue was always I wasn't respected well enough. I wasn't heard. I wasn't understood. And the last one, I wasn't loved. And guys, when I realized that 3 marriages later and 4 broken relationships, and the pattern continues to be the same, questions are the same, patterns are the same. I'm always seeking out there for that one person to love me, for that one person to understand me, to respect me. You want to hear more? When I became a single mother and I couldn't find that love out there with a man, with a partner, I begun toward, needing that from my son. And I remember my 21-year-old son, he's 25 at this point. My 21-year-old son back then was rebellious against that. He was my ever learning lesson, because back then my son was the only way for me to see true. He was able to speak honestly about some of the things that he was experiencing with me. And at one point he just said, he goes, "Mom, I can't provide you the love and respect that you want. I can't." He goes, I could, and I remember for the first time hearing from him that he goes, "It's just simply not my business." And I went, what do you mean? And, and being Eastern European and me wanting, my son to be there and respect, and you got to follow the rules, and you got to this and you got to that, until I finally slowed down and I said, okay, if this pattern is reoccurring, I got to look at my own story. I have to look at my own story, because when we out there looking for that love from someone, that means we haven't found it right here. And this is what you guys are all seeing right now. Self-love, boundaries, and toxicity. These are the three main topics that are constantly going forward. Why? Because when people talk about boundaries, people initially, Paul, I see you, I will definitely get to you. People initially think of building the walls around them. This is my boundary. Do not touch it. Do not go near. Oh, John, hold on. I'm just going to mute you. And maybe there's somebody else that I should, but if you guys are aware your mic being on, please mute yourself. So I forgot what I was saying. Yes, I was saying about boundaries, because guys, we come from different conditioning. Each and every one of us in our childhood came across different conditioning, different way of being brought up. And maybe we weren't a part of this loving family, or maybe we were. And you just have to understand that each and every one of us came from a different conditioning. Okay, there's someone that still has their mic on. Okay, that's Mark. Hold on. So if we look at each and every one of our conditionings, we will see that we began writing our own story of imperfections, different projections, rules. And I wasn't, I was also the one too. I came from a family that, abuse, mental and physical. And I, that little girl that craved that from the moment she was 3, 4, she could begin to understand what love is. I began craving that. And of course, as a grown-up woman, I went out there looking for a man to love me, looking for that father figure that I never had. And because I had my own experiences in my childhood, what do you think I was afraid of? I was afraid of mental and physical abuse. And every person that I saw in, because I was projecting it on them, I saw that in them. And that's when I began building my boundaries. Oh, there better be no abuse. There better be no, he better not raise his hand or anything like that. I didn't even get to know the person in front of me before I began stating my boundaries and closing myself to people. And that is what I always begin with, guys. In order to find love, let's begin right here. Let's begin right here, because everywhere else out there, we will not. We will find a person that will complete us, that when we get a better understanding of our own conditionings, we will find that person that we could have a clear ask from. And I'll definitely get to it a little bit later. Paul, what were your reflections?
Well, there's a lot I want to say. First of all, I want to say to you, Irina, if I could give you a hug, I would, because I think your story we can all relate to in some way. And it's unfortunate that in previous generations, the role of parents wasn't taken very seriously, and nor was it taken as important. Because I can relate to that, I didn't really have a father in my life, and, having to sort of raise myself, in terms of being my own father and son, it's not easy.
Yeah.
And, I've had the wherewithal to realize that until I get myself right, I'm not ready for anybody, because I value the importance of being a father and a husband, and that those roles, as I said, they're to be taken seriously, and they're important because there's a lot of weight and responsibility that hangs in that area. And it's not something to be taken lightly. It's not something to say, well, I'll wing it, or we'll see what happens. No, because the worst thing, and I don't mean to trigger anybody, but the worst thing that I would ever not want to happen is if a child of mine committed suicide or something like that, because they didn't get the love, they didn't get understanding, they weren't listened to. They felt like an outcast, because I can relate to all that. And it's a very lonely, dark, painful, isolating, confusing place to be. And it's just, and also to reflect on what that quote was saying, what kind of rang for me was, you have to be someone who is open-minded, who is listening to what is constructive criticism, to have people in your life who really care about you and do not hold back in terms of what they see in you that you could possibly change. Because unless you are open to yourself to change, there's a great song, Michael Jackson said, "Man in the Mirror." I don't know if you guys have heard the song. It's one of my favorite songs because a lot of it is it's so relevant to a lot of us. If you want to see the change that you want, then you start with yourself.
100%. I remember re-listening to that song, Paul. So beautiful. Yeah. I
Yeah.
remember hearing that song just recently when I came across this quote, and I went, wow. Guys, it's not new. Each and every one of us, and Paul, thank you so much for that share. And I want to add to that. Are you finished, sir?
No,
Okay. I'm glad I asked.
I just want to say too, and I don't mean to speak for you, Irina, but because I think you said you were from a Russian background, so you weren't born in this country, in Canada or North America. So there's a lot of difference with cultural change. But you know what? It's still the same in terms of what children need from their parents. Because if we don't get the validation from our parents, and we don't learn to, well, okay, I didn't get it from them, so how do I get it for myself? Then if we're not careful, we find ourselves in relationships that we don't deserve, and they're not good for us. And people, I mean, and it's sad out there, especially in this day and age now, where people, I don't know, I think, commitment seems like a word that is almost like a four-letter word, or honesty or loyal. It's like those things don't really exist anymore. It's sad we live in a society where people are more interested in hookups and this and that, and being proud of doing things online that I think are shameful, but I digress. But we have to protect ourselves. And I just want to say too, Irina, when you're saying boundaries, I think, if I may say, those are more like walls of fear, perhaps, and it's understandable because you don't want to get hurt. Why? Nobody willingly wants to get hurt. Nobody likes to experience any kind of abuse, whether it's physical or mental or psychological. Nobody likes that. Nobody wants to feel that way. So when we've been addressed that way in our upbringing, and as children, we don't have that armor. We are completely innocent. And I have a very soft spot for children because children don't have that voice yet. And that is when they need to be nurtured and protected and taught. Instill self-esteem if you're a father or mother with your children. Tell them they're worthy, that they don't deserve to be treated, unkindly. And so when children don't get that, it's tragic. It really is tragic. The way the choices they make, the behaviors they choose, the people who they hang out with, it's just sad. And so we need to make that change in order to better a society that is more loving, more caring, because mental health now is something that is in the forefront. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's something to be spoken about and talked about as something to embrace and to address, so we can just live healthy lives and happy lives, as we all deserve to have that.
Thank you, Paul.
Now I'm finished.
Thank you, Paul. I
You're
do
welcome.
want to address this, and like I said, Paul, what you have shared is definitely true. and it is true for you. And as we go along, guys, talking about children, I want to say that each and every one of us has been brought into this world, to this human experience that we are living for love. And when we were brought into the family, each and every one of us was brought into the family, to the parents that perhaps didn't know or how to love, or weren't brought up in the better understanding of what love truly is and what is the best of service for their children. Given myself as an example, when I began at the age of 3, when I witnessed the kind of violence that I never thought a child should witness from a father to their mom, because to me, Paul, you are right. You're growing up, and the only people you know that you are loving unconditionally and thinking that loving that they are loving you unconditionally are your parents. But unfortunately, our parents also had a story. So I remember when I began shifting and clearing some of the things of my own childhood, of that 3 or 4-year-old girl that had her troubles, had her projections into the world. I started looking and asking my mom, because my father wasn't alive at that point, guys, do you know how do I mute you all? Like I'm kind of lost, because there's a lot of noise going on, and I'm wondering if I could mute everyone. Mute all right there. Okay. Okay, amazing. I remember I began understanding my dad's story. And what I heard from my mom and from his brothers and from my cousins, that the raising and the growing up that my poor dad had, it was all a suffering. First of all, my dad got, his father left him. My father was age of 4 when his dad left them, and they were poor. And the mother was unfortunately a drunk. She couldn't figure this out, and she felt betrayed, and the only numbing that she could have was drinking. So there was my dad. What kind of love did he have? He had nothing. So the only one thing that he could share with me was, and with my sister, was that, whatever he knew, whatever experiences he had growing up. And what was that? It was not much. So when I began to understand where our parents were coming from and what conditioning they were brought up in, and from that world, they were trying to do their best and loving us. And it doesn't mean that my father never loved me. He did. He honestly did, on the days that he weren't, drunk and he was sober, and wasn't violent. He did. But that was the only way he knew how. And it's not, guys, it's not about forgiveness or acceptance. It's about real understanding of that. And it definitely took me some time to understand it. But I'm telling you guys, when I began to see this for what it is, and not victimizing them and, and kind of trying to find answers for me. No, it wasn't about that. It was about looking into that clarity for me, because I had all of these questions. And as a result, my life was God knows what. Am I in the relationship yet? No, not yet. But I could tell you right now that I am going out there and I am having clear conversations with people that I am meeting. Clear. Because now I come from a place, do you complete me? I'm not looking for him to love me. I'm looking to see whether they complete the lifestyle that I want to live. because I know what kind of lifestyle I want to live nowadays. And if they're not, it's not something against them. They're just not my pure match. And I'm not even sure whether there is a pure match. And Paul, I see your hand definitely, but before we go, guys, there's another slide that I want to share with you. And let's see what you think of that. Because when I looked at it, I went, pure, pure truth. Here we go. So if you really want to be free, criticism from others can be a gift. Feeling heard by any criticism, feeling the slightest urge to defend yourself, means that there is something you don't accept and love about yourself. Guys, when I understood that, that was the end of my suffering. This is the very part of you that you want to hide. You want to be loved and understood, but not there. As we've seen, hiding creates separation, and from yourself especially, as well as from others, because from that place, guys, we begin to build boundaries. When we do not want for other people to see something that is very hurtful inside of us, that is what we based boundaries upon. And that is what toxic, not towards others, towards ourselves. Because that is something that we are trying to hide most and first of all from ourselves. And if we begin to vulnerably and to openly speak about those things, like I just right now spoke in front of you, of that little 4-year-old girl that very quickly learned about the violence that no child should see. And I took that, and that 4-year-old has been running my life. And me today, a 47-year-old woman, is finally getting rid of that toddler, that 4-year-old girl who was hurt by understanding, by speaking vulnerably about it, by making my own dues with my story. So I'm gonna start, and this was the quote from a book that I believe all of you guys should buy and read. I Need Your Love, Is That True? By Byron Katie. It is currently on Amazon, and I believe it's $19 or $20. It's a must. It's a must if you want to understand, I need your love, is that true? And guys, what do you think about that? About what I have just read to you? Paul, I'll begin with you. Go on.
It's poignant. It's something that I think I even mentioned it before in my comment, where when we're in a place in ourselves that is healthy, that we're not defensive, that we're not abrasive, or we want to say, well, no, that's your problem, not mine. Then we're open to acceptance and learning. But we have to get there. It's like an illustration, let's say, like an athlete who has been injured, so he's been sidelined, but now he's doing rehab and so on. But he's not going to be back in the game, or she, until they're ready to do so. Because if you go too soon, you can re-injure the injury, and it could be worse. So just like and it's sad that people think that someone outside is going to fulfill what only they can do. And I want to say too, Irina, I appreciate your vulnerability. I appreciate it takes a lot of courage to say that and to be seen in saying that. But I just want to say, or add to it, is that in order to have a healthy relationship, we as the individual need to be healthy. We need to be in a place where we're in that stable place, emotionally in a neutral place, if you will, and not, because nobody wants to go with someone and they say something and the other person just starts to, yell at them or get angry with them. I mean, you're obviously, something's been triggered or something within you that maybe this is not quite your time yet to seek out someone. Because obviously a relationship is something where you view it as, what can I give? How can I be uplifting to another person? And in hopes that you will meet that other person with the same kind of attitude, where you want to bring something to the relationship, not, okay, I'm going to go with this person, I'm going to see what I can take, I'm going to see what I can get. That's not, first of all, a relationship is supposed to be reciprocal. It's supposed to be an exchange. You can't play tennis with someone without another partner. You got to find someone to play tennis with, and it's a back and forth. And just
Yeah.
like relationship, and it takes time. You want to get to know the person, not this attitude where you're going to have relations with someone because you met him for the first time. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's about respecting someone and respecting yourself and building upon that, having open and honest conversations about things and whatever, but having the maturity to go in knowing what you want and being emotionally available. That's the biggest thing. Emotionally available for that person and them as well as for you.
Yeah, that's it, Paul. And another thing that if I can add here, there's a sticker on my car. I drive around with, I bought them from Vistaprint, those magnetic stickers on my car. And it says two things. You ready to change your story? Are you ready to change your story? Because it will change your life. Let's all together go within and look at our own story. Because in my dating world right now, I meet people just like Paul said and shared, men, that are coming into meeting me with the baggage of their old relationship. I've dealt with my baggage. I'm good to go and find a new person. But all I keep on hearing, and listen, I've heard that both ways. Men say that too, that women come in and they set rules and parameters and how they're going to speak. And it's true, unless you have dealt with your baggage, unless you have cleared up your story, only then you will be ready to go for something more. And it has happened to me as well. I remember this poor guy that kept on writing and writing to me, and I always kept on postponing our meets and not being ready and all the rest, until one day I just realized, hey, you're not ready. You simply aren't ready. Why are you wasting this person's time? And that was the truest revelation for me. Lincoln, what are your thoughts on that last chapter that I read? What do you want to share?
I guess I can understand the discussion about boundaries. I define boundaries and walls differently. So I see boundaries as sort of like the things that are healthy, the things that you set your standards are healthy for yourself, right? That protect your self-esteem, your sense of self, right? Where walls are a self-defense mechanism for trauma. So those are the things that you've created that isolate you and whatnot. And I feel like sometimes people mix and match them. So what happens is they don't know, is this a wall or is this a boundary?
Yeah.
And so now what happens is some people, they try to protect themselves. They think they create strong boundaries. They really just create walls.
Yeah.
And I think that comes down to an understanding of attachment styles, right? You have people who are secure attachment styles, so they are able to basically connect healthier. Usually it's because either they've just grown up healthy or they've actually done the work, whatever that is, and they've unpacked. And there's some people who are anxious avoidant. These are people who tend to, avoid relationship. They get close to the relationship and then they seem to run away anytime there's intimacy. But these people also attract the other type, which is anxious obsessive, which is the person who's always people pleasing. This might seem familiar to you. This is the person who's always giving, because they're thinking that if I just give, eventually you love me, right? And I find a lot of people who find themselves to be anxious obsessive, they tend to find these things like I'm doing everything that I should be doing, right? And the
Yeah.
other, I don't know why I'm running away.
Lincoln, you're absolutely right. Go on, you wanted to say something more?
I think at the core of it, it's understanding what your attachment style is first. That's the first step, right? And then you start to unpack, well, why do you have that? Usually it stems with childhood trauma or just some form of trauma that could have been betrayal or trauma or abusive trauma. And it's your coping mechanism because we don't really, because that's just how the body operates.
That's
It
it.
just naturally adjusts, but it doesn't necessarily know, okay, you don't need to do this anymore.
Yeah, absolutely right. Because each and every one of us, as a child, we learn to please. With every conditioning that we have been brought up in, we learn to please. And then as we go on, all of you remember, oh, Irina, be a good girl and go and fetch your father or something, or your mother. Oh, what a good girl. And as children, we learn that by being nice, by being good, by being, just like Lincoln said, giving, pleasing, we actually get things our way. This is a way of manipulation, guys. So if we find ourselves in a relationship where, we're trying to be nice, or we're trying to, and that was me. My last relationship, I remember 15 years ago when I met my ex-partner, I was this different girl who was trying to be the way he wanted me to be because I liked him. And it didn't matter that some of the things, the way he was, were kind of with me. It wasn't sitting well, but I thought, it's okay. Me being nice, I'll change him. I'll change him later. Well, 15 years later, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. But you know who got aggravated? Me. Because that pleasing, that being someone else didn't help. And that is us. If we feel the need to be nicer, be different, be someone else other than our true selves, that is a form of manipulation towards the partner. We are not being honest with them. And believe you me, it's going to backfire. One day it will. In questions like, he or she may say to you, well, we've met a year ago or 2-3 years ago, and now you're a completely different person. Well, of course, because I was pretending to be somebody else. So you could like me, so you could love me, so you could give me a little more of your time. The true thing about relationships is that you could be yourself right from the beginning. And just like Lincoln said, boundaries, 100%. When boundaries came from that healthy, healed place, yeah, you could come into any dating or any relationship and say, I'm not okay with that. I'm not, and it's going to be a clear, simple boundary, not building walls where, oh yeah, I got to get rid of these people because they're toxic. They're making me feel bad about me. Oh, and I have a lot of that. I have a lot of examples, because what we do when we're trying to isolate those people, those toxic people, because they aggravate us, they annoy us in some, we feel some sort of a resistance. But if we have read, clearly and understood what I've just shared with you guys, let's welcome that criticism. In every relationship that you are now currently finding yourself, stop yourself for a second and just slow down and get quiet and listen to that criticism that the other person is giving to you, and ask yourself one question: where can they be right about me? Not from a judgment standpoint of view, from curiosity. If I'm hearing this, where can they be right about me? What did I do to make this situation happen? how did I help this situation to become as this is? Because guys, that's the mirror. That's the mirror. That is when you begin to see clearly. Paul, do you mind if there was another person before you that had her hand. Fairuz, was that you? Why did you put your hand down?
I was gonna comment on, I thought this, a few words you said were interesting. You said a 4-year-old girl, and you're going to get rid of her, and now at this age. But I thought maybe a nicer, or my perspective is to embrace that 4-year-old and give her the love she needed then, and reparent her and integrate her back into your life with trust instead of getting rid of her. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's exactly what I did. That was exactly what I did. When I realized that I had to slow down, I made sure that I began with me. Because that love that I was running for and looking in other men, and even my son, how desperate was I? I have the only child, and that poor kid had the heaviness of the weight that not only he had to love himself and deal with whatever was happening in his life, he also had a responsibility of loving his mom and showing his mom that she's worth it. I remember when I began 10 years ago with the therapy and all the rest of it, just to see, wow, what a weight sometimes we're putting on our parents, on our children, on our friends, asking them to love us, where this was our gift right from the beginning. And if we could only come back to that and to understand what has happened for us to need that love. Go on.
I also grew up with an angry father, and he also hit my mom a couple of times. And I remember that he eventually stopped hitting her, but he was still very angry, and emotions were suppressed. That's what he learned. Later on, I got married, and he was also a very abusive man. I don't know, subconsciously I selected somebody similar. He was very abusive, and he also basically domestic violence. So after I escaped, I kind of went the other route where I could not trust any man ever. And it's been over a decade now, and I'm just single because I just can't lower that trust boundary with anybody.
Yeah.
So I wanted to understand how are both similar experiences, but you were able to marry again, but I think I cannot still, and I just wanted to understand how the divergence and, how to fix this.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that question, Fairuz, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Yeah, you see, for me, I remember the question that I asked my mom, and guys, I'm definitely gonna go Mark and Stephanie. I'm gonna go to you and Paul, then yourself too. For me, it was, I had to find the answers. I had to find the answers. And that was it. I was gonna die trying. And I remember my mother just recently turned 75 years old. And I was so, from the age of 14, I began to really despise her. I couldn't understand why a woman of her position, of the leadership, because I always say that I'm Russian, but I'm from Moldova, and my mom was one of the top leaders of one of the biggest sugar factories in Moldova, and I was looking at her. She could just say one word, and all the men within that sugar factory were listening to her. And there's this guy that that she kept on taking knocks to the face and to the body from. And I was despising her for the, for not willingness to change this. And she finally turned 75 years old, and I was bold enough to ask her that one question. I go, hey, I've always despised you for the weakness. Why haven't you changed this story? This guy. And I remember, she looked at me and she goes, I wasn't strong enough. I just wasn't strong enough. I was afraid. I wanted, back then in Russia and Moldova, if your girls came from a divorcee family, they weren't going to get married well. She goes, and I wanted you guys to get married well to a good family, to nice men. So basically what I understood, that my poor mother sacrificed her life, her happiness, for me and my sister to marry well. And that just, because when we have judgments on our parents, on our people, we don't even stop ourselves to recognize those judgments. Because that was my mom. That was the life that she was living. That was what she found possible to do. It was, in other words, guys, it was her business. That was what she could do. And it wasn't my business to judge her, to tell her how it should be and all the rest of it. Well, look at me. I was stronger. I was more courageous. I began to end each and every of my relationships and my marriages. Did I find happiness? Not until I looked in right here. And finally, and guys, I say it's never too late. It's never too late to look at your own story and see, what have I created that I am seeing this, that I am right now living through this. And with that, Stephanie, you have, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I just wanted to go back to the quote that you said about criticism from others can be a gift and how we can use this. And I just want to use this analogy that I heard, that like everything, we are who we are. So for example, you can only get orange juice out of orange, right? So when the pressure is on and you get squeezed, then that's all that's going to show up. So I agree with that criticism is a gift. So it's a gift for us to see what is inside of us and to see what bothers us and where we need to work on. So if someone says something and it bothers us, then that's something that we need to work on. That's you. That has nothing to do with the other person. So I agree with that quote, that it definitely is a gift and it can help you on your journey of growth to show you where you need to grow when you see things show up in your life and how it makes you feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my comment on that. And I just wanted to, for Farouz, just say that maybe what you need to work on, just a suggestion, is maybe trust in yourself first, because you can't give what you don't have. So if you can't trust yourself, then you won't be able to trust anyone else. So maybe start first with trust in yourself. That's just my suggestion. That might be the first step. Is you can only give what you have.
Guys, thank you, Stephanie, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name right.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would also like to know what that trust in yourself would comprise of.
Yeah, Farouz, because guys, whatever, I love that orange juice analogy, squeezing. Yeah, out of orange you could only get orange juice. That's it. And try, how I remember when I first began to look at criticism, and guys, I want to caution you, when you begin to look at criticism, And in asking inward questions, please do not judge yourself. Look at the criticism provided only through the lens of curiosity. Because I remember when I judged my son, and every time criticized him and he criticized me, and there was something that I always neglected. Why wasn't my beautiful boy, the child of, like, he was the one, right? I thought I lived for him back then. That's what I thought. And here we go. This one kid never replies to my messages, never calls me, never, like, none of that. And I needed that from him. And I remember the first time that I got aware of that mirror exercise and my judgment against my son and all the criticism that I heard from him, I brought that mirror right in front of me. And I remember I asked myself, only with curiosity, if I'm judging Peter for that he's not calling me, he's not texting me, he's not respecting me, where is that showing up in my life? What is the equivalent of that currently appearing in my life? And guess what? I'm exactly the same way to my mother. Exactly the same way. We are two sisters, and I believe I'm repeating myself if you guys have been on the previous webinars. We are two sisters. My sister calls my mom every day. I call my mom once a month. And that doesn't mean that I don't love her. But guys, whatever we see and whatever we are so resistant in our life, we are doing exactly the same thing to others. And before we fix it right here, or before we want it fixed over there, we got to fix it right here. Mark, you have had your hand up for a while. What are your reflections?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
My comments are going to be a bit all over the place, but hopefully inspiring. This is a great conversation. First, I would say, based on the thought that just came from what you showed, the presentation about criticism. So it's nothing we don't all know, really. Who doesn't want to accept constructive criticism? But when the criticism is judgmental, then often that's the person projecting what they would like you to do, to change, or whatever satisfies them. So you have to have a good filter, or yes, you're going to get hurt. Secondly, Irina, it's very almost shocking, but I'll say surprising, when you use the term, I'm looking to be completed, because I've certainly had enough experience online to see a lot of women express that for them, they just want somebody to complement their lives. So they've got a different take on what they supposedly want, or is it need, or they don't really know. I don't know. So going back to relationships, dating, love, lifelong, whatever it is you see yourself in there.
Mark, I haven't heard anything.
You're looking from, not my comments, but somebody else, but it's something I wholly agree with.
I can hear you, Mark.
Yeah. So bottom line is, and it's come out of this conversation, of course, we all think we're aware in the moment. And then when you look back, were you? Well, I thought I was right there. I was present, right? Well, when it all happens, when you meet that somebody, you'll know. You will be present, and you're not in the past so much with the baggage, and you can't be looking forward so much either. You have to be there. So what was it that I heard somebody say? So this is maybe a revelation to you. You have to be physically attracted to the other person. That's a for surety. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Okay. That's number one. Number two, you have to be enamored with all their personality plus, including their strengths, their weaknesses, whatever. You've accepted all this. And if you have one and you have number two, it's still not enough. For what? For you think you have your lifelong mate there. You have to share the same life goals. So we can all think about that. We've all hopefully have had relationships or whatever, and we thought that's going to last forever. We hoped it was. Well, what happened there? So use that kind of analogy. And then to cap it all off, I guess I'll just leave it with this, because you guys have talked a lot about your past and your family and your parents and all this stuff. But I'm going to bring it back to relationships. We don't pick our parents.
Sorry, Mark, we don't what our parents?
We don't pick our parents.
Yeah.
So when we keep picking our so-called mates, and you said it at the beginning, Irene, I think, it's the pattern. Use a generalization, women looking and finding the bad boy, being attracted to the bad boy, and men constantly looking for the sexiest woman in the world or whatever. And we keep following that pattern. So until we find awareness in the moment and we check ourselves and realize, is this, what it is, then you may meet that person and it may be the one.
Very, very good awareness, Mark. Definitely. And if I can add, and this, I'm careful what I'm going to add, because this discussion is quickly turning into a coaching session or some therapeutical part of, let's figure this out. Because guys, when I began this, let's talk about love. And as I went along, I realized that love is what is, and love is because love is everywhere in our relationships, not only with our mates, is everywhere. And just that understanding of love is bringing us towards the truth of what we are, of what we're looking for, and what we need. Because you see, we are most of the time applying the need to our partners. Oh, I need him. There was a question in the Facebook group. This beautiful guy, Marcus, asked, and he goes, well, I need her to be so-and-so. Well, why do you need her to be any different than she is right now? Because Mark and everyone here on the call, we are projecting our reality. We are, from all of our conditioning in the past and the way we were brought up and the experiences that we have had, we've written a program. We have written a story of, about little Irina, little Mark, little Paul, little Lincoln, little everybody's on. We have written our story. And in regards to that story, this is how we act, and that is what I say, change the story. And it's not about bravery, and it's not about being courageous. It is about looking into the story that you have written based on experiences that you thought meant something about you. No, those were experiences. Those were experiences for you to learn and move forward. Just move forward. Yes, it was an experience. It isn't about you. It isn't about your deficiencies. It's just what it was. And just like you, Mark, beautifully said, we do not pick our parents. We do not. Those parents were in there for me and all the rest of you on the call to learn something about me. And I believe that my lesson was that I am, you know, I'm strong. This is how I am. I'm willing to test things out. And my father was a great teacher in that. And I hold nothing against him. And thanks God for my mom, who was a saint with, with all the patience that she had. But what I'm really bringing this forward to you guys is, if we see that this is us, this is our own lens that we are looking through, and we are the ones that projecting things on people, our hurt, our experiences, our deficiencies, we are projecting that on them. And they are projecting something on us. And from the moment we clear up our story, we are beginning to have clear asks of that person. Hey, you know what? And it's not about you or me needing for them to change. It's about me wanting things my certain way, my boundary. I want my guy not to drink. And it's okay, because that was my understanding back then. I want my guy not to drink. But when I cleared up my story, it's not about my guy drinking or not drinking. It's about my understanding of that, my own deficiencies in regard to that, my own protection and projection. Because I could be okay with a certain way, and listen to me, I'm losing my thought process here. Let me get back to it, because I think I went too far into it. What it is basically, guys, if we could clear up our projection, if we could clear up our story, our lens, and what we are viewing relationships from, it doesn't have to be about, them needing to do things a certain way. It could be simply asking right here, what is it there for me? And I wish I wasn't as confusing as I am. And Paul, you had your hand for a long time. I've noticed that some of you guys had hands and put them down, so feel free to join in. Paul, you have the floor.
Thank you. Just before I forget, I want you, if you could, Irina, to put that book that you had shown us in the chat, because I want to look into that.
Mhm.
I don't want to sound redundant or reiterate things, but I just want to say briefly, ultimately, we are our best investment. The more we can invest in ourselves, the better the return for ourselves as well as for others. In whatever, if it's a friendship, if it's between parents, between siblings, between family, or intimate relationships, the better we can be the better version of ourselves we can be, the happier we feel about us. The worst mindset to be in is this desperate need. I need someone in my life. No, you don't. You want to be in a position where you would like to, and you want it to happen. But it's not something that you're going to trip yourself over or just like stretch yourself out over, because ultimately you have to be comfortable with yourself. You have to enjoy moments of being alone and just being with yourself in that quiet time, because nobody can do that for you. You could have a gazillion friends, but they can never do what only you can do. And so we have to be in a place where we're at peace with ourselves. We are our authentic selves, that we're not going to pretend to be someone else because all of a sudden we feel insecure, or we want someone's approval, or we want someone's acceptance, that we end up in a sense, the last thing you want to do is betray yourself of your own identity because you want to please someone or you really want them to like you. Because to me personally, I think that's pathetic. That's just my idea. It's like, take it or leave it in a sense. This is who I am, but I'm not saying I'm going to be someone who is a drill sergeant or who is rigid or who is rude or angry or whatever. I want to be caring, kind, loving, but I'm not a doormat either. So you have to vet who it is that you're inviting into your life. Are they authentic? Are they true to who they are? Are they loving and kind? And as was mentioned in the chat and in our discussion, unconditional loving someone, accepting their flaws and their strengths, because nobody's perfect, nobody knows everything. And so when getting back to the subject of being criticized, you know what, even if it's done in a not so nice way, see the value of what was said, because maybe something in there is of good use, and we're not responsible for how someone says it per se. They may not have said it so fluently or so kindly, but rather than being offended by that, sort of resonate and say, well, what did they say that I can take that could be of use to me? Because we're going to meet all kinds of people in life, and not everybody's going to be, oh, Mr. Kind or Mrs. Kind. Some people might say things out of whatever. And the best thing we can do is not react in the same level, but that doesn't mean also we don't want to take shit from people either, but just be civil about it and be confident about it.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. Yeah. And I want to add something. Guys, seeing flaws in somebody, that is a judgment. That is us being superior, not accepting people for who they are. What if that isn't a flaw to them? Because if we put a mirror, the moment we see that flaw in somebody, like I saw the flaw in my son, oh, he's not texting me, he's not calling me. Where is that a little bit in me? Because when we are judging somebody, and that judgment comes in so strongly because a little bit of this is in us, and looking into it with compassionate now, because, okay, so I have it, why is that person not allowed to have it? That is now compassion. The moment you begin to invite compassion into your life, that is how you begin to be compassionate into the flaws of someone else. Because there are really no flaws. It's our judgment through our perception on them. Lincoln, what would you like to add?
I think Paul talked about, with regard to looking at the criticism of others, more or less like not being in that desperate place. I think more on top, we talk about like being okay with the person. I think at the biggest component where most people are looking outside of themselves is because of, it's those times when you're alone, that's when you're stuck with you. And when you're stuck with you, that's when probably the intrusive thoughts come. That's when the desires, the walls, sometimes you might be even arguing, talking to yourself about what you want, what you're not getting, why can't you get it? And it ruminates. And it's almost like, for I think a lot of people who struggle with relationships, like that's when your inner voice is screaming the loudest at you. And in order to quiet that voice, you get into a relationship, you go out, meet people. It's an addiction to people, really.
It's numbing. Lincoln, you're absolutely right. It's numbing. And we have different mechanisms of numbing. You're absolutely right.
I think really and truthfully, to heal, like the first step is just to stay still, right? And really get to know you. Now people say like, read this book, read that book, but like sometimes it's not going to be about just reading a book, but just spending time with you in those thoughts, challenging those thoughts, communicating with that part of you that is probably deeply unpleased. That, as you said, that 4-year-old who's been in pain for quite some time and doesn't feel heard. And I don't think you get rid of the 4-year-old, but you talk to the 4-year-old to teach them to understand. The thing about it is you're feeling the emotions at the same time. And in a lot of ways, I think some people, they struggle with just because they just want the feelings to go away. I think that's at the core of it. They want just the feelings to go away as soon as possible. And we've more or less been conditioned to try and get the solution as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We want to end that suffering right away. Just like in Matrix, do you guys remember? Here's a red pill and here's a blue pill.
That
We want to find a pill to end our suffering, to bring us solution. I often call it a recipe. You know, can I find a recipe? I'll follow it to the T and hopefully I'll make a beautiful cake out of it. Lincoln, you're right. You wanted to add something?
just at the end of it, I think in a lot of ways, part of the other issue with it is that we don't know when the time horizon, when the healing is complete, or the fear of relapse. Like, so if you heal, you get into a relationship, and then you think you're healed, and then you go right back to the relapse. I think those are some of the biggest fears people have when it comes to relationships.
Yeah.
I know for myself, I have that big fear. But the time horizon, I think it's harder. I mean, it'd be like the equivalent is like trying to get a job, but not knowing how long it's going to take you to get the job you want in order to basically make the money you want. So you can just move on with your life, right? I think that's another issue. So it's like, if you could get a master's in like a year or so, then that seems reasonable. If you could just do this healing, self-healing, and then, I don't know, after like maybe 2 years, you get into that healthy relationship. Most people would feel like, oh, this is not a huge issue. But I think a big issue is the time horizon for a lot of people is up in the air. And then they're seeing what's even more painful for a lot of people who are in our situation is they're seeing people who seem to be getting out of the situation. And it's like, how did they do it?
Yeah.
Why can't I do that? So
Yeah.
it's creating this impatience. And I
Yeah.
think that more or less of just being by yourself is so important. But I don't think we've been taught how to do that.
Yeah. Oh, and it's so beautiful, Lincoln, because we haven't. We haven't. And we have grown up and experienced comparing yourselves to others. You know, that ego, that identity shows up. Well, and identity always shows up in the lack of something. You know, they're better than me. I'm worse at this. It's, have you noticed? Like anytime you talk to yourself, and maybe that's why, Lincoln, people don't want to be left alone with their thoughts, because identity, our ego usually shows up and it's like, well, look at them. They got it. They're living their beautiful life. What is wrong with me? The only question we have when we begin to think with for ourselves, what is wrong with me? And it's not about wrong or right. It's never have been. It's actually about slowing down and recognizing, yeah, instead of generalizing something, what is the first step that I could do? And I ran a lot of workshops, and one of them was goal setting and goal getting, where we've got this big goal. We've got this, you know, for some relationship, marriage, for others, a good job, for, you know, anything, a goal, lose weight, get more money. Let's begin to step away from this general idea of a job, money, and let's begin to get clear. What is it that I want? And if it's money, how much money? If it's a relationship, What do I want? Like, I remember when it came very clear for me, what do I want as a relationship right now? And it was not a long-term relationship. And it was not, it was probably casual dating. And when I got very clear on that, I began to casual date. I began to have conversations with people, not to get something from them, but to actually get to know them. To meet, guys, it's such a beautiful gift to go out there and to meet a person just to get to know them and not have any hangups. Oh, is he or she gonna like me? Or, am I okay to, like, two people had said yes to this conversation. So let's go. We set aside an hour. Let's go and enjoy that. And breaking it up into small steps, small achievable steps, into understanding, what do I want? Where do I want to go with? If it's losing weight, how much weight do I want to lose? 10 pounds? Let's go. What is the first step that I want to do in regards to losing 10 pounds? I don't know. Today, maybe it's getting on the scale. And the same thing with anything else. If I want a relationship, what is the first step in relationship, in the loving relationship I am willing to do? And maybe for some, it's looking right here. Maybe for others, just like it was for me when I was ready, signing up for a dating site. Did dating site help? I don't know. I'm still figuring that out. Still curious enough. But it's finding that first doable step that we could take. Guys, I see we're running a little bit out of time. Guru, I'm going to ask you to speak. And then within 5 or maybe 3 minutes, I do want to share a very important slide. Guru, would you be able to share your reflections?
Yeah. So what I was thinking about was when you were telling about us not embracing the faults of someone, it was we need to reflect on that, on ourselves. What I felt was what we consider as faults in somebody. It's something that we don't do to someone else. Stuffs like those, rather than. So there are things like preferences, and there are some things called non-negotiables. Once we get our non-negotiables clear, that is the boundary lines that we are talking about. Preferences can be this side or that side. Yeah, you may be okay with it or may not be okay with it. But I think we must be settling for the non-negotiables and setting our boundaries based on non-negotiables. So as you were telling, when you look into yourself, you will get to know what are your preferences and what are your non-negotiables for whatever you're looking for. I just wanted to add this.
Yeah. Sometimes it's great to set your non-negotiables if they have been cleared up within you. Because guys, if those are those non-negotiables, especially the ones that we feel so threatened by, that is where we're going to begin to look first. Guys, I'm going to share a little, and then I'm going to get to Lincoln and Paul. And there is an announcement that I want to share with you towards the end of our conversation here. So if you're interested in that announcement, please stick around after 12:30. Here's this slide that I really want to get your views upon. Let me get this up. I know you guys are reading, but I'm also going to read this out with you, because this is something that I want to end our call with, a little more understanding on what love is. Oh, sorry, I just saw a grammar mistake. Love is what you are already. Love doesn't seek anything. It is already complete. It doesn't want, it doesn't need, and has no shoes. It already has everything it wants. It already is everything it wants, just the way it wants it. So when I hear people say that they love someone and want to be loved in return, I know they're not talking about love. And as we spoke, guys, they're talking about a certain need that hasn't been cleared up. They are talking about something else. Sometimes you may seem to trade love for a stressful thought appearing in the moment. It's a trip to illusion. Seeking love is how you lose the actual awareness of love. But you can only lose awareness of it, not the state of love. That's not an opinion, because love is what we all are. It is immovable. Guys, when I got that after so many years of searching, when I got that, I initially got my freedom. Freedom from all the needs I put out there. Freedom to be myself just as I am. With all, because I'm not perfect. None of us are. None of us are. But we are enough the way that we are. We are unique, and love is the essence that we were born with. So, guys, within 4 minutes to the end of our call, Lincoln, I see you have your hand up. Would you like to add to this, or? Well, I don't know, maybe Lincoln, or Lincoln, are you there? Okay. Paul, would you like to add something?
I'll be really brief. I just want to say, going back to the healing the child inside, it's not about erasing, getting rid of, it's about healing that child. It's about making that connection and saying, you know what, everything we've gone through, it's okay. I accept you. I don't care if nobody else did, I do. I love you unconditionally. No matter what the hurt of the past was, it wasn't our fault. So it's like you can almost visualize, just embrace that child in your mind and saying, I got you now. And I won't let anything or anyone hurt you anymore. That will never happen. Also too, I don't know, I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah. If we don't love ourselves first, I know this is probably, a lot of these, this, what I'm going to say now, I'm sure we've all heard it before. You can't love anybody else unless you love yourself. And we know it's sad. A lot of people in this world do not love themselves. And, whether they live in a facade of who they think they are, but for myself personally, when I'm ready to enter a relationship again, I want it to be honest and authentic. I think a lot of the times we put so much pressure on ourselves that it's like we have to perform, or we're on stage of some sort. We got to put on this front. If we could only just be honest and open and vulnerable and just say, you know what, screw the pressure. We don't need all this pressure. I like what you said, Irina, meeting someone and just having a conversation. No expectations, no nothing. Just having a chat.
Yeah.
About anything, and just being completely open about it, because it's like, it's not a big deal. It really isn't a big deal. We don't have to put on a show or anything. Just be ourselves and just enjoy company with someone.
Absolutely, because during that conversation, in that conversation, you will get to know whether you want to have a second conversation. That's the only way, guys. That is the only way. And when you come into open, not expecting anything, and listen, if that person has in some way attracted you, for you to want to have this initial first or second conversation, give it your open experience, and just try it for the willingness of meeting someone else. What if during that conversation you'll find out interesting things about him or her? What if you just become friends at the end of that? You don't need to create a loving relationship from that, but there's another person that you got to know over coffee, over drink, I don't know, over something. You had another connection, because there was another quote that I wanted to share with you guys. Something about isolation. Isolation is never the key. Never the key. Human beings, we are human beings that are a part of a community. We will never heal in isolation. Never. I know I've done it. just talking through, just being in the community, and sometimes asking for help. Yeah. And I also want to add, Paul, to what you said, and especially, having read that last slide, guys, love is a verb. We are love. So doing love, loving somebody isn't right. We are love. That and when that understanding, because it didn't come to me right away. It honestly didn't. And I know you guys are sitting there thinking, Jesus, what gibberish is she talking right now? I know it was the same thing for me. Well, I am love, you are love, who's doing the loving here? Listen, I get it. And as you deepen your understanding, and that is the reason why I wanted, to put aside a few minutes. Guys, based on your feedback and noticing that I remember in May, my first workshop around this, only 8 people came in. Now I'm seeing 30 and I'm quite impressed. And I'm seeing that people are sitting and listening and having questions. And I'm sorry, guys, I haven't gotten to all the comments here, but I definitely will. It looks like I'm probably going to run them beginning September, and I will deepen our knowledge now with exercises. We're actually going to understand what is that love and that essence that Irina's talking about, because this is the healing that we're all going to do. We're going to slow down. We're going to sit in that space and begin to understand what is love and the verb and us being the love that we are, and just sharing it with somebody, because unless you understood compassion, you haven't understood love. So guys, in August, I will not run this Let's Talk About Love. I know everybody's having their summers, and in Canada, summers are short, so we want to go out there and experience the rest of the summer and all the rest of it. But I am going to offer you guys a gift. I've got 5 slots open. So if any one of you is interested in continuing and deepening this conversation one-on-one with me, you could definitely email me and you could request that 1 hour with me. No strings. I'm not going to try to sell you coaching or try to pitch something to you. But if you notice during these conversations that you still want to uncover something for yourself, or there's something that really got you and you want to know more, or there's some kind of patterns that you're seeing and you're really curious to challenge your story, write me an email. And we will find the time that will work for both of us. So we could slow down and we could look into those patterns for you. And let me share the email with you. It's iconic. Hey, who am I writing to? So, and guys, what are you hearing from all of this? How I really actually am asking you for feedback, because there's also a venue that I have secured. She's a friend of mine, and I'm kind of thinking, what if we met? What if we had this kind of conversation in person, or maybe something different? Because I am looking at doing something interesting, something for the community and for myself as well. So I'm going to share with you my email. Those ones that are willing to take a deeper look, please email me and we could talk at gmail.com. And if you guys are open to sharing your feedback, we've got another 10 minutes. Who would like to share their experience, or maybe something that you wish to hear more? Oh, put email here. Adigir, have you seen the email? It's iconiccoach@gmail.com. Actually, my website is exactly that too, www.iconiccoach.com. You could find me there. Let me just put that in here as well. www.iconic. Why iconic, guys? Do you want to know the story? I used to work as a model. www.iconic.com. I used to work as a model. I remember after when I got married for the second time, and then suddenly realized 7 years later that I want to walk away from this marriage. I literally had nothing. I thought I wanted to be a trophy wife, and I was very good trophy wife, until my ex-husband gambled everything away. So I remember I noticed the patterns. I began to notice the patterns in people that I was in relationships with. And the only asset we had that was split was the house. So me and my son was 7 years old, we moved out, and I purchased a different home, but I realized that the money from settlement of divorce is going to run out. And I had no idea where to make money. I honestly didn't. You know, all I knew, you know, I was 30 when I divorced for the second time, that I had my looks and I could cook very well, and you know, that was it. And I remember somebody said, well, Irina, you're 5'11". Why don't you go and try modeling? And it was scary. It was so scary, because I was like, how am I going to find modeling? Like, well, who's hiring what? But I did exactly what I told you guys. I took from one step. Okay, so what are modeling agencies? And I found 7 legitimate modeling agencies, and I went to their open calls. And would you believe? And of course, a lot of doors got slapped in my face. Oh, you know, you're too tall, you're too short, you're too this, you're too that. You know, your features are such. I heard a lot of it, and I almost gave up. But there was one more agency that I had to go into, and I did. And they hired me on the spot. And I worked for the shopping channel for the rest 10 years. And I guess when I was choosing, you know, iconic or what for my, it was in regards to that, because we could be icons of our lives, guys. We could create our best life, our best relationship, only if we taken the time to slow down and to really decide, what is that I want? What is it that I truly want? In regards to money, in regards to relationship, in regards to the career. Because I got to be honest with you, when at 37, I realized that modeling wasn't cutting it for me, and I was running like a bimbo on hills, back and forth, you know, and yeah, so modeling, okay, so I was receiving some sort of, this was a job, but this wasn't the job that was fulfilling me. And that was the time to slow down. And now I finally found the job that is fulfilling. And I am living the truth of, if you love something which you do, you don't have to work a day in your life. It is what it is, guys. And I hope these conversations about love, thank you, Mark. I hope these conversations about love had changed your perspective a little bit and made you open and willing to look at your story, look at your own story, look at your own ask, and slow down enough to learn to understand who you are. And then create conversations. Go out there and have conversations with people. I'm telling you, you smile at one person, the other person will smile back. And that is how we, that is how we communicate. That is how we stop numbing, because that's exactly what it is. When we are lonely and when we are not wanting to hear the truth of us, yeah, we find ways to numb. Video games, TikToks, social media, drinking, smoking, sexual, gambling, all of that. And guys, it doesn't have to be that. Because sometimes we're so afraid looking inside, worrying that we may find something that will disturb us. It wasn't like that for me. And I could tell you, it isn't like that for us. It isn't going to be like that for you guys. It's going to be a revelation. It's going to be a freedom. So with those words, guys, I loved our conversation today. Thank you for participating. Thank you for listening. And as I said, you want to take a little deeper look into what you're experiencing, write an email and we'll find the time to talk. All right.
Thank you so much.
for your time.
Yeah.
It was really
you so
informative.
much.
Thank you.
Have a great time, guys.
You.
Take care of yourselves.
Well,
Bye,
bye.
everybody.